Have you ever felt invisible to the people you love the most? I did. One year, they forgot Mother's Day completely. No cards, no calls, no messages. I waited, hoping for a sign that they still cared. But the silence was louder than any words. What they did not know was that I remembered every little thing they forgot, especially their college tuition deadlines. Sometimes the smallest acts of forgetfulness carry the deepest wounds. And sometimes those wounds awaken a strength we never knew we had. Before we jump back in, tell us where you are tuning in from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe. Because tomorrow, I have saved something truly special just for you. My name is Linda Parker. I am 52 years old. I live in a small town in Ohio. It is quiet here, peaceful most of the time. I have lived in this house for 25 years. It is the place where I raised my two children, Emma and Jack. They are both adults now. Emma is 24 and Jack is 21. Every morning I wake up early. I like to drink my coffee slowly while looking out of the kitchen window. The garden is not very big, but it is my favorite place. I have roses, tulips, and some herbs growing there. Taking care of the plants helps me feel calm. My days usually follow a routine. I prepare breakfast for myself, sometimes for Emma or Jack if they are home. Emma goes to college in another city, but she comes home every weekend. Jack is working part-time at a local bookstore. He spends most of his time with friends or studying for his exams. After breakfast, I clean the house and do some shopping. I like cooking, especially simple meals like pasta or chicken with vegetables. My family says I'm a good cook. They always ask for seconds. Cooking is a way for me to show love. In the afternoons, I often read books or watch television. I enjoy stories about people and their lives. Sometimes I write letters to old friends. Writing helps me think clearly. In the evenings, we have dinner together when Emma and Jack are home. We talk about our day, share small jokes, or discuss news from town. Those moments feel important to me. Family is very important. I remember last Mother's Day. Emma called me early in the morning. She said, "Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I love you." That made me smile. Jack sent a card in the mail. It was simple but kind. I felt happy and loved. I am not perfect. Sometimes I worry about the future. Emma is finishing college soon. Jack will need to decide what he wants to do. I want to support them in every way. That is my job as a mother. Despite some worries, my life feels normal and steady. I have good friends and a close family. I enjoy the small things: sunshine, quiet mornings, a warm meal. I like to think that everything is fine, that my children remember me and care for me, that they see the sacrifices I have made, that they understand the love I have for them. Sometimes I feel tired. Raising children is not easy. Watching them grow and make mistakes is difficult, but it is also beautiful. This is my normal life. A life full of love, routine, and small joys. Nothing very exciting, but real and true. Tomorrow will be another day. I will wake up, drink my coffee, and hope for more happy moments with my family. The days after Mother's Day felt different. I could feel it in the quiet moments, the small spaces between words. At first, I did not want to believe anything was wrong. Life was still the same, I told myself. Emma and Jack were busy with their own lives. They would come back soon. Everything would be fine. but something felt strange. It began on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch. The sun was warm, and I could hear birds singing outside. Jack was supposed to come home for a quick visit. He often did this on Tuesdays after work. I waited by the door, listening for the sound of his car. The doorbell rang. I smiled and opened the door quickly, but it was not Jack. It was a neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. She looked worried. "Linda," she said softly, "have you heard from Jack lately? He has not been at the bookstore this week." I felt a knot in my stomach. "No, I have not seen him," I said carefully. "I thought he was busy with exams." Mrs. Thompson nodded slowly. "That is what I thought too. But today he did not answer his phone. I am worried." I thanked her and closed the door. I stood there for a moment, feeling unsure. Something was not right. I tried to call Jack again, but the phone went straight to voicemail. My heart beat faster. Later that evening, Emma came home. She looked tired and a little upset. She sat at the kitchen table quietly. "Emma?" I asked gently. "Is everything all right?" She sighed and looked at me. "Mom, I think we need to talk." I nodded, waiting for her to say more. "I feel like something is wrong with Jack," she said. "He has been avoiding my calls. He seems distant." I reached out and held her hand. "I am worried too." We sat in silence for a moment. The house felt colder somehow. I wished I could fix things, but I did not know how. The next day I went to the bookstore. The owner, Mr. Carter, was behind the counter. I asked about Jack. "He has not been in for a few days," Mr. Carter said slowly. "He told me he had some problems to deal with." I looked into his eyes, searching for more. He said nothing else. I left the bookstore feeling more confused. What problems? Why did Jack not tell me? That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Jack and Emma, about how quiet the house had become. I tried to remember the last happy moments, but the silence grew heavier. The following morning, I decided to call my sister, Karen. She has always been a good listener and gives honest advice. "Karen," I said when she answered, "something feels strange with the kids. Jack is not answering. Emma is worried. I do not know what to do." Karen listened carefully. "Linda, trust your feelings. If you think something is wrong, keep looking for answers. Do not ignore your heart." Her words gave me some courage. I promised myself I would try harder. That day, I waited by the phone. Every time it rang, my heart jumped. But it was not Jack or Emma. When Emma came home again, I asked her if she had heard anything new. She shook her head and looked down. I could feel something changing, I whispered to myself that evening. I did not know what the change meant yet. But deep inside, I knew my normal life was about to shift. Something was happening that I could not stop. The house felt emptier, the smiles less certain, the future more unclear. I sat by the window and watched the sun go down. The sky turned orange and pink. The quiet was heavy. I hoped for a sign, a word, a reason. But all I could feel was the strange silence between us. After the strange silence settled over my home, confusion began to fill every corner of my mind. I woke up each morning with a heavy feeling, as if something was pressing on my chest. I could not understand what was happening with Jack and Emma. Their distance was like a wall growing between us, and I did not know how to break it down. I tried to keep busy. I washed the dishes, swept the floor, and watered the plants in the garden. These small tasks usually made me feel calm, but now they only reminded me of the quiet house and empty rooms. The ticking of the clock sounded louder than ever. I thought about calling Jack again. I had tried many times, but his phone stayed silent. I left messages, but he did not call back. Each time I looked at the phone, hope grew in my heart, but it soon turned to disappointment. Emma was no different. When she came home, she seemed tired and distant. She did not talk about her college or her friends. Instead, she sat quietly and stared out the window. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, but the words caught in my throat. One afternoon, I found Emma in the living room, holding an old photo album. She looked at the pictures of when we were all happy, our family dinners, birthdays and holidays. I sat next to her and took her hand. "Emma," I said softly, "please tell me what is going on. Why do you feel so far away?" She looked at me, eyes full of tears. "Mom, I do not know how to say this. It feels like you do not understand us anymore, like you are not really here." Her words hurt deeply. I wanted to explain that I loved them with all my heart, that I had always tried to be there for them. But somehow my voice did not come out. That night, I lay in bed and thought about the past. I remembered when Emma and Jack were small children. They ran through the garden laughing. They asked me to play with them. I was tired, but I always said yes. Now they seemed so distant. It was as if the years had created a gap I could not cross. I felt lost in a sea of silence. The next morning, I went to the kitchen and made breakfast. I hoped that sharing a meal would bring us closer. Emma came down, but barely smiled. Jack was not home again. We ate quietly. I wanted to speak, but the right words did not come. After breakfast, Emma left quickly, saying she had to study. I was left alone with my thoughts. The why confusion grew stronger. I wondered if I had done something wrong. Had I failed as a mother? Had I missed signs that they needed me? I thought about the last Mother's Day. Was it only a simple phone call or card that mattered? Or was there something deeper, something I did not see? The house felt empty without Jack's laughter or Emma's chatter. I missed the warmth of their presence. Days passed slowly. I watched the clock, waiting for any sign from them. But silence was all I heard. One afternoon, I decided to visit Emma's college. Maybe seeing her in her world would help me understand. When I arrived, I waited outside the library. I saw students walking by, talking and laughing. But Emma did not come out. I left a note in her mailbox asking her to call me. I hoped she would. That evening, I sat in my chair, wrapped in a blanket. I thought about how much I wanted to fix everything. I wanted to feel close to my children again, but I also felt scared. What if they did not want me near? What if the gap between us was too wide? The confusion was like a fog that did not lift. I could not see the path forward. I prayed for clarity. I wished for a sign that things would get better. And then, in the quiet of the night, I whispered to myself, I must keep trying, for their sake and mine. The journey was only beginning. The road ahead was unclear. But I knew I could not give up, because family is more than just blood. It is about love, trust, and hope. Even in confusion, I held on to hope. I wanted to trust Jack. More than anything, I wanted to believe that everything was going to be okay. But trust is not easy when silence grows louder than words. I felt torn between hope and fear. My heart told me to reach out, but my mind warned me to protect myself. One Saturday morning, I decided to visit Jack's favorite coffee shop. It was a small place near the bookstore where he worked. I thought maybe I could see him there and talk. I needed to hear his voice, to know he was all right. The shop was quiet when I arrived. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air. I sat down at a corner table watching the door. Time passed slowly. Then suddenly Jack walked in. He looked tired. His hair was messy, and his eyes held a sadness I had never seen before. When he saw me, his face changed. For a moment, I thought he might turn away, but instead, he walked over and sat across from me. "Mom," he said softly, "I did not mean to worry you." His words made my heart ache. I wanted to ask him everything, at once. Why had he been so distant? What was wrong? But I also wanted to be gentle. I wanted him to feel safe. "Jack," I said carefully, "I have missed you. I have been worried. Please tell me what is going on." He looked down, his hands trembling. Then, slowly, he began to speak. "It has been hard, Mom," he said. "I have been struggling with school, work, and other things. I did not want to bother you. I thought I could handle it alone." I reached out and took his hand. "You do not have to face things alone. I am here for you. Always." Jack nodded, but I could see the pain behind his eyes. I wanted to help, but I did not know how. We talked for a long time that morning. He told me about the pressure he felt, the mistakes he had made, and the fear of disappointing me and Emma. I listened, holding back my tears. I understood then that trust is fragile. It is built slowly, with patience and care. Jack was trying to protect me by hiding his pain, but hiding only made the distance grow. After that day, I tried to be more present. I called Jack more often, sent messages, and invited him over. Sometimes he accepted, sometimes he did not. But I never gave up. I wanted him to know that I loved him without conditions, that my support did not depend on his success or mistakes. Emma also began to open up a little. She shared her worries about college and the future. I listened, offering comfort when I could. One evening, Emma said, "Mom, I know things have been hard for all of us, but I want to try. I want to trust again." Her words gave me hope. I realized that trust is a two-way street. It requires effort from both sides. I was ready to give that effort. I began to see small changes. Jack smiled more often. Emma called me just to say hello. The house felt warmer. Still, I knew that healing takes time. Trust is not a quick fix. It is a journey with many steps. Sometimes, I worried that the past mistakes would return to haunt us. But I chose to focus on the present, on the love that remained. I reminded myself that I am not perfect. Neither are they. We are all learning, growing, and healing together. One afternoon, I sat in the garden with a cup of tea. The sun was shining, and the flowers bloomed brightly. I felt a quiet strength inside me, a hope that was slowly growing. I whispered to myself, "I want to trust him. I will trust him, because love is stronger than fear. That day, I made a promise to be patient, to listen, and to believe in the power of family. No matter how difficult the road may be, I knew I would walk it with an open heart. Because trust is not just about believing in others. It is about believing in ourselves. And I am ready to believe. The days after my conversation with Jack brought a fragile hope. I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could heal between us. Yet deep inside, I could not shake a quiet voice, a warning that something was still not right. One afternoon, I met with my longtime friend, Susan. We sat in the small park near my house, surrounded by blooming flowers and the soft hum of birds. I wanted to share my hope with her, but Susan's eyes looked serious. "Helen," she said gently, "I am glad you talked to Jack. But be careful. Sometimes people hide things to protect themselves, or even to protect others. It does not mean they do not need help, but it can mean the situation is more complicated than it seems." Her words stayed with me long after we parted. I thought about what she said. Could there be something Jack was not telling me? Was there a problem deeper than school stress or work pressure? That night, I lay awake, turning Susan's warning over and over in my mind. I wanted to trust Jack completely, but my heart felt uneasy. The next day, I decided to watch closely. I tried not to seem suspicious, but I paid attention to small details. When Jack came home, I noticed his phone buzzed often. He quickly put it away whenever I looked. Emma also seemed distracted. She was quiet at dinner, picking at her food. I asked her gently if she was all right, but she only shrugged. I felt like I was watching a slow-moving storm, the calm before the rain. One morning, Jack left the house early. I noticed he did not take his usual bag. Something about his hurry made me nervous. I wanted to follow him, but I stopped myself. Trust means giving space, I reminded myself. Instead, I called Susan. "I think you were right," I said softly. "There is something I do not understand. I do not want to lose my children, but I feel like I am losing them." Susan's voice was kind but firm. "Helen, listen to your heart. Do not ignore what you feel. Sometimes love means facing hard truths, even if they hurt." I thanked her and hung up. I knew I had to be brave. I could not hide behind hope alone. That afternoon, I found a letter slipped under my door. It was from Emma. My hands trembled. As I opened it, she wrote about feeling lost and overwhelmed, about a mistake she made, and how she was afraid to tell me. I felt tears sting my eyes. My daughter needed me more than ever. I decided to talk to Jack again. When he came home, I took a deep breath. "Jack," I said gently, "I want you to know I am here. But I also feel there is more going on. Please, if you are struggling, you can tell me." He looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "Mom, there is something I have not said. I was afraid it would break your heart." My heart pounded. I waited, holding my breath. Jack told me about a problem at work. A mistake that cost him money. He was afraid of losing his job and disappointing me. But he did not want to add to my worries. I reached out and held his hand. "Jack, no matter what happens, we face it together. You are not alone." That night, I felt a small weight lift from my chest. The warning was not a sign of danger. It was a sign to listen more carefully, to open my heart wider. The next days were not perfect. There were still silences and moments of doubt, but there was also more honesty and trust. I learned that warnings can come from love. They remind us to be aware and gentle, to care deeply without losing ourselves. I promised myself to listen more, to be brave enough to face the hard things, because family is fragile and strong. It is made of moments like these: pain, truth, hope, and love, and I am ready to keep listening, to keep loving, to keep hoping. After I heard the warning from Susan and saw the signs of trouble, I tried my best to ignore my fears. I told myself that everything would be fine. I wanted to believe that the small problems would disappear on their own. Sometimes, ignoring a problem feels easier than facing it. Every morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach, but I pushed it away. I focused on my daily routine, making breakfast, watering the plants, and cleaning the house. I kept busy because if I stopped, the worries would come back. Jack was still distant at times, but he smiled more than before. Emma seemed quieter, but she did not speak about the letter she left for me. I thought maybe she was healing in her own way. One day, while I was folding laundry, I heard my phone ring. It was Jack. He sounded tired but happy. "Mom," he said, "I got a chance to talk to my boss. Things might get better." I smiled and felt relief. Maybe the storm was passing. But then, the small doubts returned. I noticed Jack stayed out, late sometimes. When I asked, he said he was with friends. I wanted to believe him. I told myself that trusting him was the right thing to do. At dinner, Emma was quiet again. I wanted to ask her about school or friends, but she changed the subject quickly. I thought maybe she was protecting me, or herself. I remembered Susan's warning. She said to listen to my heart. But my heart was tired. I wanted to rest. I wanted peace. So I tried to ignore the little signs that something was wrong. I told myself it was normal for teenagers and young adults to be secretive. One afternoon, I found a note on the kitchen table. It was from Emma. It said, "Mom, I am sorry. I will talk soon." I put the note in my pocket and smiled. I believed she would talk when she was ready. But the silence continued. I felt lonely in the house. I missed the times when we laughed together, when we shared stories. I thought about the past, when my mother used to say, "Helen, problems do not go away by themselves. You have to face them, even if it is hard." I knew she was right, but I still tried to ignore the growing tension. One night I sat in the living room, listening to the quiet house. The clock ticked loudly. I thought about Jack and Emma. I wished I could fix everything. I whispered to myself, "Maybe I am wrong. Maybe I should not ignore this." But the fear was strong. What if I pushed them away by asking too many questions? What if they did not want to share their troubles with me? I thought about the pain of betrayal, the pain I saw in the eyes of other mothers who lost their children to secrets and lies. I wanted to protect my family. I wanted to keep the peace. So I stayed silent. I smiled. I pretended everything was fine. Days passed. The quiet feeling inside grew. I could not sleep well. I woke up in the middle of the night, thinking about all the things left unsaid. I realized that ignoring problems does not make them disappear. It only makes them grow. But sometimes, a mother must choose patience. Sometimes, love means waiting, with an open heart. I told myself, I will wait. I will listen. When they are ready, they will come to me. That was my hope, my prayer. Still, deep inside, I knew I could not ignore the warning forever. Something was coming, something I had to face. I was scared, but I was also ready to be strong, ready to protect my family. Because love is not easy. It is not always calm and peaceful. Sometimes love is a storm we must weather, and I would weather it, no matter what. Sometimes the smallest things say the most. The way Jack looked at me changed slowly, almost without words. It was in his eyes, his silence, his hesitation. I noticed it one afternoon when he came home after school. The house was quiet, and the sunlight fell softly through the windows. Jack stood in the doorway, his eyes fixed on me. But it was not the same look I was used to. It was a mixture of guilt, sadness, and something I could not name. He looked away quickly, as if he wanted to disappear. I felt a strange ache in my chest. I wanted to ask him what was wrong, but the words did not come. Instead, I just watched him. Later that evening, we sat at the dinner table. Jack barely touched his food. Emma looked worried but said nothing. I tried to make the conversation light, but it felt forced. After dinner, Jack went to his room without a word. I could hear the door close softly. I felt alone in the quiet house. The next morning I saw Jack in the kitchen. He was making coffee with slow, careful movements. When he noticed me, he gave a small, tired smile. It did not reach his eyes. The way he looks at me, I thought. It is not just tiredness. It is something deeper. I wanted to reach out, to tell him I understood, but I also feared making things worse. That day, I watched him closely. When I asked about his day, he gave short answers. When I tried to talk about his dreams and hopes, he changed the subject. His eyes told the real story. They were heavy with worry and shame. I could see how much he was carrying inside. I remembered the times when Jack was a little boy. He would look at me with bright eyes full of trust and love. Now, those eyes were clouded. One afternoon, I found Jack sitting alone in the garden. He was staring at the sky, lost in thought. I sat beside him and said softly, "Jack, you do not have to carry everything alone." He looked at me then, and for a moment the sadness broke through. "Mom," he whispered, "I am afraid. I do not know how to fix this." His words hurt me, but they also made me stronger. I reached out and held his hand. "We will fix this, together," I said gently. "You are not alone." The way he looked at me then was different. There was a flicker of hope, a silent promise. But healing takes time. The next days were still difficult. Jack's eyes sometimes looked away, sometimes met mine with a question. I knew he was trying. I knew he wanted to trust me again. I also noticed the way Emma looked at me. She seemed to understand the tension, but she tried to keep peace. One evening, Emma said quietly, "Mom, I see how hard you are trying. I see the way Jack looks at you. We are all scared, but we love you." Her words filled me with warmth. I realized that even in silence, love speaks. The way Jack looked at me taught me about patience and courage. It taught me that trust is fragile but possible. Sometimes the hardest battles are not fought with words, but with the look in someone's eyes. I promised myself to keep watching, keep listening, and keep loving. Because the way he looks at me is a story of pain, hope, and the slow path to healing. And I am here, ready to walk that path with him. The weight of silence grew heavier with each passing day. I could feel it pressing down on my chest, making it harder to breathe. I knew I had to break the silence. I needed to hear the truth from Jack's own lips. The truth was the only way to heal. Without it, the distance between us would only grow. One quiet evening, after dinner, I found Jack sitting alone in the living room. His eyes stared blankly at the floor, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. I sat down beside him slowly, careful not to startle him. "Jack," I said softly, "I need to ask you something important. Please be honest with me. Whatever it is, I want to understand." He did not answer right away. His silence spoke volumes. I waited, giving him space to find the courage to speak. Finally, his voice came, low and hesitant. "Mom, there are things I have not told you. Things I was afraid to say." I nodded gently. "I am listening." He took a deep breath, then looked at me. His eyes were tired, but there was a flicker of hope. "It is about work," he said. "I made a mistake, a big one. I lost some money for the company. I tried to fix it, but it got worse." My heart sank. I wanted to reach out and comfort him, but I stayed silent, letting him continue. "I was scared to tell you because I did not want to disappoint you," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought if you knew, you would lose respect for me." "Jack," I said, "I could never lose respect for you. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we face them." He nodded slowly, relief mixed with shame in his eyes. Then he added, something that hurt me deeply. "There is more, Mom. I have been hiding how much stress I am under. Sometimes I feel like I am drowning." Tears filled my eyes. I did not know if I should cry or hold him. I chose to hold him. "I am here for you," I whispered. "We will face this together." Jack leaned into me, and for a moment I felt the walls between us crumble. But the truth was not easy to hear. It was heavy, painful, and real. The next day, I noticed how Jack tried to carry his burden alone. He smiled when I was around, but looked tired and worried when he thought no one was watching. I decided to support him in small ways. I made his favorite breakfast. I left encouraging notes on his desk. I reminded him gently to take breaks. Jack began to open up more. Our conversations grew longer and more honest. I saw the man behind the stress, the son I loved. But the road ahead was still difficult. I worried about how the mistake at work would affect his future. One evening, I sat with Emma and shared what Jack had told me. She nodded, understanding the weight her brother carried. "We must be strong for him," Emma said quietly. "He needs us." That night, I lay awake thinking about trust. Trust is fragile. It is earned, lost, and rebuilt. I realized that asking for the truth was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. It was the moment when fear started to lose its power. I promised myself to be patient and kind, to listen without judgment, and to love without conditions. Because the truth can hurt, but it can also heal. The truth brings light to dark places, and it is the first step toward healing. The way Jack looked at me after our talk was different. There was no longer a shadow of fear. Instead, there was a quiet strength, a bond renewed. Knew this was just the start. There would be challenges ahead, but I also knew that together we could face them. I was ready to stand by him, ready to walk with him through the storm. Because sometimes love means asking the hard questions and listening with an open heart. Since the night I asked Jack the truth, my mind has been restless. I cannot stop thinking. The questions swirl around like a storm inside my head. Why did he hide the problem? How bad is it really? Can we fix it? The unknown feels heavy and endless. During the day, I try to focus on simple tasks. I clean the kitchen, water the plants, and fold the laundry. Yet even then, my thoughts return to Jack and his struggles. Every small sound makes me look up, hoping for a sign, some clue that everything will be okay. Sleep has become difficult. At night, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling. The quiet is loud in my ears. I replay our conversation again and again, searching for answers between the words. I wonder if I said the right things, or if I made things worse. Sometimes, I imagine all the ways things could go wrong. The company might lose more money. Jack might lose his job. What would that mean for his future, for our family? The fears creep in, and I try to push them away, but they return stronger. I feel isolated, even though I am surrounded by my children. They each carry their own worries, and I do not want to add to their burden. So, I keep my fears hidden, wearing a calm face during the day, but inside, I feel fragile and alone. When I see Jack, I want to reach out. I want to tell him that he is not alone, but the words get stuck. I worry that if I say too much, he will feel pressured. Instead, I watch him from a distance. I notice the small signs, how he sighs deeply, how his smile sometimes fades quickly. One afternoon, I found him in his room, staring at the wall. He did not say a word, but I knew he was carrying the weight of the world. I sat beside him quietly. He looked at me and gave a small nod. No words were needed. In that silence, I understood his pain. I realized that sometimes love means being present without speaking. It means offering comfort, even when you do not know the right words. During these days, I also reflect on myself. I ask, have I been too proud, too silent? Have I trusted others too quickly? Have I ignored my own feelings? I have always been strong. I have faced many challenges, but this is different. This pain is not mine alone. It is shared with those I love. I remind myself that it is okay to feel confused and afraid. It is okay to be vulnerable. Strength is not just about holding everything inside. Sometimes true strength is asking for help and admitting we are not perfect. I called Susan one evening. Her voice was warm and steady. I told her how I could not stop thinking, how the worry would not leave me. She said, "Helen, your heart is full. That is why your mind is busy. Give yourself permission to rest. Trust that you are doing your best." Her words stayed with me. I realized that I had been pushing myself too hard. I needed to breathe, to slow down, to find peace within the chaos. I started to write in a journal. Each night, I wrote down my thoughts and feelings. It helped me to release the storm inside. Writing became a small light in the darkness. At times, I felt tears come, but I did not hide them. I let the emotions flow, knowing that healing often begins with pain. I also reached out to Emma more. We shared quiet moments, and I told her, "We are in this together. We will find a way." Her smile gave me hope. Even in difficult times, love can shine through. I understand now that my thoughts, even the difficult ones, are part of my journey. They remind me that I care deeply. They show me that I am human. Though I cannot stop thinking, I choose to let those thoughts guide me, not control me. I will face each day with courage, even when the path is unclear. Because I know this is not the end. It is only the beginning, and with love, patience, and hope, we will find our way. Sometimes pain does not shout. Sometimes pain is silent. It sits quietly inside, like a shadow that follows you everywhere. This is the kind of pain I have come to know these days. It is a quiet pain, deep and heavy, but unseen by others. After many sleepless nights, I found myself sitting by the window, watching the rain fall softly against the glass. The world outside seemed peaceful, but inside my heart was aching. Tears slipped down my cheeks, even though I tried to hold them back. Did not want anyone to see me cry. I wanted to be strong for Jack and Emma. I wanted to be the mother they could rely on. But the truth was that sometimes I felt very small and very lost. The quiet pain came from feeling alone in a house full of people. Everyone had their own worries, and I could not share mine without feeling like a burden. I learned to keep my sadness hidden behind a calm smile. Sometimes I thought about the past, about the days when life was simpler, when my children were young and happy. I missed those times more than I could say, but the quiet pain was also about fear. Fear of what was happening to Jack. Fear of losing the family I loved. Fear of what the future might bring. I tried to talk to Jack about my feelings, but he seemed too tired to listen. Emma was busy with her studies and trying to support her brother. I did not want to add to their stress, so I kept my pain to myself. I cried quietly in my room. I wrote in my journal when no one was near. Writing helped me to understand my feelings and to let them out. One evening, I sat alone in the dark. The house was silent except for the soft sound of the rain. I felt a deep ache in my chest that would not go away. In that moment, I realized that pain, even when quiet, is real. It does not need to be loud to be important. It is okay to feel hurt, to feel sadness. These feelings are part of being human. I thought about the word strength. I had always believed strength meant never showing weakness. But now, I understood something different. Strength also means accepting pain and facing it, even when it hurts. I remembered a conversation with my mother many years ago. She told me, "It is okay to be broken sometimes. Broken things can be mended, and they can become even stronger." That memory gave me comfort. I knew I was not alone. Many people carry quiet pain, and many have found a way to heal. I decided to take small steps to care for myself. I started to take walks in the park near my home. The fresh air and green trees helped to calm my mind. I also reached out to a counselor. Talking to someone who listened without judgment was a relief. It helped me to understand that my feelings were valid. Slowly, I began to find moments of peace. The quiet pain was still there, but it did not control me. One day, Jack noticed the change. He said, "Mom, you look stronger, like you are carrying your pain with courage." I smiled and replied, "I am learning to be gentle with myself. That is the first step." The quiet pain remains a part of my story. It is a reminder of what I have been through and what I am still facing. But it is not the whole story. There is also hope, love, and the possibility of healing. I know now that I do not have to face this pain alone. I have my family, friends, and the strength inside me. The quiet pain is a chapter, not the ending, and I am ready to turn the page. The silence between Jack and me was growing heavier. It was not just the quiet moments in the house. It was the space that stretched between our hearts. I knew I needed an answer, but I did not know how to find it. I could not keep living in this uncertain place, not knowing where we stood. One morning, I woke up feeling stronger. The quiet pain had settled just enough for me to gather courage. I needed to speak, to confront the truth that was waiting for us both. I prepared breakfast, quietly, and waited for Jack to come down. When he entered the kitchen, I looked at him steadily. "Jack," I said firmly, "I need to talk to you. Please do not avoid me. I want to understand what is happening. I want the truth." He looked surprised, but did not respond. His eyes flickered with something I could not read. Fear, maybe, or guilt. I waited patiently, knowing this was difficult for him. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, I have been afraid of disappointing you, afraid of what might happen if you knew everything." I reached out and took his hand. "Jack, I will never stop loving you, no matter what. But I cannot help you unless you are honest with me. Please trust me." His breath caught, and for a moment, he looked vulnerable, like a boy lost in a storm. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I have not been honest about how bad things are at work. The mistakes I made cost more than I said. The words hit me hard, but I held my ground." "How much, Jack? We need to face this together." He swallowed hard. "It is worse than I thought. Some payments were missed. The company is struggling. I do not know if we can recover without help." I felt the sting of betrayal mixed with love. I wished he had told me sooner, but I understood his fear. I also knew I had to be strong for him. "We will find a way," I said quietly. "But we must act now. We cannot wait any longer." Jack nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude and shame. "I will. Do whatever it takes." We spent the day making plans. We talked to financial advisors and trusted friends. The truth was painful, but it also brought clarity. We could no longer hide from the problems. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the word trust. Trust is fragile and precious. When broken, it takes time and effort to repair, but it is not impossible. I thought about my own life and the times I had been afraid to speak the truth. I realized that silence often makes problems worse. The next morning, Jack and I began to rebuild. We shared everything openly. It was not easy. There were moments of anger, frustration, and tears, but we faced it together. I felt proud of Jack's courage to admit his mistakes. I felt proud of my own courage to ask for the truth. Slowly, the distance between us began to close. The answer I needed was not just about the work problems. It was about honesty, love, and forgiveness. I knew the road ahead would be long, but at least we were walking it side by side. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. I was ready to face whatever came next. Because sometimes, to heal, we must first ask for the truth, and then we must listen with an open heart. The truth came slowly, like the first light of dawn breaking through a long, dark night. It was not easy to hear, but once it was out, I finally understood everything. The confusion and doubt that had clouded my mind began to clear, revealing the reality beneath. Jack sat across from me at the kitchen table. His hands trembled slightly as he spoke. He told me everything, the mistakes at work, the mounting debts, and the pressure that had been suffocating him. But there was more. He revealed how he had hidden some facts because he feared disappointing me. He thought I would judge him or be angry. As I listened, my heart ached for him. I saw the weight he had carried alone, the fear and shame that had kept him silent. But I also saw his courage in finally telling me the whole story. I did not judge. Instead, I reached out and took his hand in mine. "Thank you for trusting me," I said softly. "We will get through this together." Understanding changed everything. The anger and confusion that I had felt began to fade, replaced by empathy and resolve. I realized that Jack was not the enemy. He was a son who needed support, not punishment. I thought about my own fears and how they had kept me distant. I had wanted answers, but was afraid of what they might be. Now that I had them, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if a heavy fog had lifted. I began to see the situation more clearly. The problem was serious, but it was not hopeless. There were options and people willing to help. The first step was to face the truth openly and honestly. Jack and I made a plan. We would speak to a financial advisor and work on a budget. We would look for ways to increase income and reduce expenses. It would be hard work, but it was necessary. As we talked, I noticed a change in Jack. His shoulders seemed less tense, and his eyes held a spark of hope. I felt a renewed love for him, and a deep respect for his strength. I also reflected on myself. This experience had taught me important lessons about trust, communication, and forgiveness. I knew that I needed to be patient, both with Jack and with myself. I thought about the future. It was uncertain, but it was also full of possibility. Together, we could rebuild what had been broken. That evening, I sat by the window again, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with soft pink and orange hues. I felt a calmness I had not known in weeks. I whispered to myself, "I finally understand." And that is the beginning of healing. Sometimes, walking away is not a sign of weakness. Sometimes, it is the bravest thing we can do. I never thought I would reach that moment. I thought love and patience would be enough to fix everything. But life has its own lessons, and I had to learn this one the hard way. After days of trying to hold everything together, I realized that some things were beyond my control. Jack's struggles were not just financial. They had opened a deeper wound between us, one of trust, respect, and understanding. I felt trapped in a place where I was giving all I could, but the answers I needed were not coming. One evening, after another difficult conversation that ended in silence, I knew I had to make a choice. I could continue to fight a battle where I was losing myself, or I could step back and protect my own heart. I think I need some time away, I said quietly to Jack. The words felt strange coming from me. I was the one who always stayed, who never gave up. But now, I had to take care of me. Jack did not argue. He looked tired and defeated. There was pain in his eyes, but also a flicker of understanding. That night, I packed a small bag. I left a note for Jack, telling him that I loved him but needed space to think and heal. I did not know how long I would be gone. I only knew that I had to walk away, at least for a little while. I stayed with a close friend who welcomed me with open arms. Being away from home gave me a chance to breathe, to feel the quiet without the constant worry. I spent my days walking in the park, sitting by the lake, and writing in my journal. The physical distance helped me create emotional space. I was no longer caught in the daily stress of Jack's problems. Instead, I could focus on myself, on my feelings, my needs, and my future. But walking away did not mean I stopped caring. I thought about Jack every day. I prayed for him and hoped he would find his way. I hoped that the time apart would help us both grow stronger. I also faced difficult emotions. I felt guilt for leaving, sadness for the distance between us, and fear of what the future might hold. These feelings were heavy, but I knew I had to feel them to heal. I learned that walking away is not about giving up on someone. It is about setting boundaries and choosing self-respect. It is about saying, I matter too. After a week, I called Jack. Our conversation was honest and open. We spoke about the pain, the mistakes, and the hope for reconciliation. It was not an easy talk, but it was necessary. I am proud of you for taking this time, Jack said softly. I needed this too. Hearing those words filled me with a quiet strength. I knew that walking away had been the right decision. I returned home a few days later with a new sense of clarity. I was ready to face the challenges ahead, but on my terms. I was no longer lost in the chaos. I was grounded and determined. The house felt different when I came back. It was quieter, but also calmer. Jack greeted me with a small smile. We both knew that healing would take time, but at least we were moving forward. Walking away had given me a chance to find myself again. It reminded me that sometimes love means knowing when to step back and take care of your own heart. I am still learning to balance love and self-care. It is not easy, but it is necessary. I walk forward now with hope, courage, and a promise to myself to never forget that I matter. Because sometimes walking away is the first step to coming home. Returning home was not the end of my struggles. In fact, it was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with unexpected pain that lingered long after the initial shock had faded. I thought that by stepping away, I would leave the hurt behind. But pain has a way of following us, quietly settling into the corners of our minds and hearts. The house was the same, but everything felt different. I could see the cracks that had been hidden beneath the surface for so long. I saw the tiredness in Jack's eyes, the weight he carried every day. And I felt my own heartache, the ache of disappointment and uncertainty that refused to disappear. At times, the pain was so strong that it took my breath away. I would sit alone in the living room, staring at the empty spaces between us. The silence was loud, filled with things left unsaid and moments lost. I missed the warmth of laughter and easy conversations. I missed feeling safe and connected. But mostly, I missed the sense of certainty that had once been there. Now everything felt fragile, like glass waiting to break. Some nights, the pain made it hard to sleep. I would lie awake, replaying conversations, in my mind, wondering what I could have done differently. Was I too harsh? Too soft? Did I ask for too much or too little? The questions spun in my head, but there were no answers. Only the ache. I realized that healing is not a straight line. It is messy and slow. Some days feel hopeful, and others feel dark. The pain does not disappear all at once. It stays, reminding me that I am human. I found comfort in small things: a cup of tea, a book, a quiet walk outside. These moments help me breathe through the pain, even if just for a little while. I also began to open up to friends. Sharing my feelings was not easy. I worried they might think I was weak or failing, but instead, I found understanding and support. Knowing that I was not alone helped me carry the weight of my emotions. One friend told me something that stayed with me. Pain is proof that you have loved deeply. It means you are still alive. I repeated those words often. They gave me permission to feel, to cry, and to be gentle with myself. The pain also taught me about forgiveness. Not just forgiving Jack, but forgiving myself. I had blamed myself for the distance between us. I had felt guilty for not fixing everything sooner. But now, I saw that I had done my best with what I knew at the time. I was not perfect. No one is. Forgiving myself was hard, but it was necessary. It allowed me to let go of the heavy burden I carried and to begin healing from within. As the weeks passed, the pain softened. It was still there, but it was quieter, like a shadow in the background. I learned to live with it without letting it control me. I also noticed changes in Jack. He was more open, more willing to talk about his feelings and fears. We still had difficult moments, but there was a new sense of honesty between us. We were learning to rebuild trust, piece by piece. It was slow, but it was real. One evening, as we sat together watching the rain, I felt a small spark of hope. The storm outside was strong, but inside, there was warmth. I whispered, "The pain stays, but so does love." That truth held me steady, knew that healing would continue, one day at a time. And even though the pain stayed, I was no longer afraid of it. Because pain is part of the journey. It is part of growth. And it is part of the love that we carry in our hearts. Sometimes, when life becomes difficult, the past feels like a warm place to visit. I found myself often looking back at the years that once felt so full of joy and certainty. The past was a place where laughter was easy, and love seemed simple. I missed it deeply. I remembered my children when they were young, how their faces lit up when they saw me, how their hands fit perfectly in mine. We spent long afternoons in the garden, planting flowers and telling stories. The house was alive with noise, with music, with happiness. Those were the days when I felt truly connected, needed, and valued. Now, everything felt different. The house was quieter. The walls held memories, but the warmth seemed to have faded. I missed the feeling of belonging that came from those times. I missed the way we used to celebrate small moments, like birthdays or school plays, with so much excitement. Often thought about my own mother. She had passed away several years ago, but her presence stayed with me. She was the one who taught me about resilience, kindness, and love. I missed her voice, her hugs, and the way she could calm any storm with a single smile. Memories of Mother's Day were especially painful. Those were days we celebrated together, with flowers, cards, and special dinners. It was a time when I felt appreciated and loved. Now those days passed without a word or a call from my family. It felt as if I had become invisible. I wondered if they remembered the sacrifices I had made for them. The nights I stayed awake worrying, the meals I cooked, the advice I gave when no one asked for it. I wondered if they remembered the love that had always been there, even when I was not perfect. But I also knew that missing the past did not mean I wanted to return to it. Life moves forward, whether we like it or not. Holding on to the past, too, tightly can keep us stuck, unable to grow. Instead, I tried to hold the memories gently, like fragile treasures. They reminded me of who I was and where I came from. They gave me strength to face the present. Sometimes I would find old photographs and look at the smiles frozen in time. I would laugh at the silly hairstyles or the clothes we wore. Those pictures were a bridge between then and now. I shared some of those stories with friends. Talking about the past helped me connect with others and reminded me that everyone carries memories, both good and bad. Missing the past also made me reflect on what I wanted for the future. I realized that I could create new memories, even if they looked different from before. I could find new ways to feel connected and valued. I started to write letters to my children, not to send, but to express my feelings honestly. In those letters, I told them about my love, my hopes, and my pain. Writing helped me release emotions I had kept hidden for too long. I also began to notice small moments of joy in my everyday life. A cup of tea in the morning sunlight. A phone call from a friend. A quiet walk in the park. These simple things reminded me that life still holds beauty, even in hard times. I did not know what the future would bring, but I felt more prepared to face it, carrying both my memories and my hopes. Missing the past is a natural part of life. It is a sign that we have lived, loved, and experienced deeply. It is okay to feel that ache. But it is also important to keep moving forward, to open our hearts to new possibilities. I am learning to do both, to honor the past and to embrace the future, because life is a journey, not a destination. And sometimes the sweetest moments are yet to come. When life feels heavy, talking to a friend can be a gentle light in the darkness. I had learned this lesson slowly, but it became clearer during my hardest days. After all the silence and loneliness, I realized that sharing my feelings could bring relief, even if just a little. One afternoon, I called my oldest friend, Lisa. We had known each other for more than 30 years. Lisa was the kind of person who listened without judgment and spoke with kindness. I needed that now more than ever. "I'm not sure how to say this," I began hesitantly. "But I feel lost and tired." Lisa did not interrupt. She let me speak, and I poured out everything: the pain, the confusion, the fear. I told her about Jack, about the distance growing between us, and about the heavy silence that filled our home. As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting from my chest. It was as if the words themselves carried some of the burden away. Lisa listened quietly, offering soft words of comfort when I paused. "You are not alone," she said gently. "I am here for you." Those simple words meant more than she could know. Sometimes, just knowing someone cares is enough to bring hope. Lisa reminded me of my strength. She spoke about the times I had faced challenges before and how I had found a way through. Her belief in me helped me believe in myself. We talked about the importance of taking care of myself, not just others. I had been so focused on fixing everything that I forgot to pause and breathe. Lisa encouraged me to find small moments of peace and joy, even in difficult times. She also helped me see that it was okay to ask for help. Asking is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of courage. After our call, I felt a little lighter. I made a promise to myself to reach out more, to connect with people who cared. I realized that healing does not happen in isolation. It happens through connection and support. The next day, I met Lisa for coffee. Sitting together in the warm cafe, I felt a sense of comfort. We talked about everything and nothing, memories, dreams, and the little things that make life meaningful. Talking to a friend reminded me that I was still part of a larger world. Even when my family seemed distant, I had people who loved me and wanted to help. I started opening up more, sharing my feelings honestly instead of keeping them bottled inside. It was not easy. Sometimes I worried about being too much or too vulnerable. But each time, I found that true friends accepted me exactly as I was. Our friendship became a source of strength. Lisa checked in regularly, and we made plans to spend time together. These moments of connection filled the spaces in my heart that had felt empty. I also began to listen more to others. I realized that everyone carries their own struggles, and sometimes just being there for someone else can be healing for both people. Talking to Lisa taught me that I did not have to carry everything alone. Life is better when we share it with those we trust. Slowly, I felt the walls I had built around myself begin to come down. I was no longer afraid to show my true feelings. I was learning to be vulnerable and to accept love in return. I am grateful for that friendship, for the laughter, the tears, and the quiet moments in between. It reminded me that healing is a journey, and we do not have to walk it alone. Now, when I feel overwhelmed, I pick up the phone or send a message. I reach out, knowing that a friend's voice can be a beacon in the dark. I encourage you too to find someone you can trust, to speak your truth, to listen with an open heart, because sometimes a simple conversation can change everything. There comes a moment in life when saying goodbye is not just necessary, but healing. I did not imagine this moment would come so quietly, yet it arrived with a gentle clarity I could not ignore. Saying goodbye was not about anger or regret. It was about letting go of what no longer served me. After many long conversations, many tears, and countless moments of doubt, I knew I had to say goodbye to the version of my family I once believed in, to the dreams I held close for so long. It was painful, but it was also freeing. I remember sitting in the quiet of my living room, the afternoon light soft through the curtains. I wrote a letter, not to send, but to speak my truth. In that letter, I said goodbye to the past, to the pain, and to the hurt that had built up inside me. I love you, I wrote, but I cannot keep waiting for a change that may never come. Those words were difficult to write. They felt like closing a door, yet also opening a window to fresh air. Saying goodbye did not mean I stopped loving my family. It meant I chose to love myself, too. I realized that holding on to hope without boundaries was hurting me more than helping. It was time to create space for healing and growth, for myself and for them. Saying goodbye was not a single event, but a process. It meant setting limits on how much I would give without receiving. It meant deciding not to let disappointment define my days. I told Jack gently, explaining how I needed time and distance to heal. It was hard to see the hurt in his eyes, but I knew it was necessary. After that conversation, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for what we were losing, and relief for what I was gaining. Peace, I also said goodbye to old habits that kept me stuck. I stopped checking my phone constantly, waiting for a message or call that might never come. I stopped replaying painful moments in my mind. Instead, I focused on the present. This goodbye was a gift to myself, a chance to reclaim my life and my happiness. In the days that followed, I found new rhythms. I woke up with a quiet determination to nurture myself. I read books that inspired me, took walks that refreshed my spirit, and spent time with friends who supported me. Though the goodbye was hard, I could feel a new strength growing inside me. It was a strength born from self-respect and courage. Learn that saying goodbye does not mean forgetting. It means accepting that some relationships change, and some dreams evolve. It means choosing peace over pain. It means loving without losing yourself. I still carry the memories of the past, but they no longer weigh me down. They are part of my story, but they do not control my future. I want to tell anyone who feels lost or hurt that it is okay to say goodbye. It is okay to step back and choose yourself. You are worthy of love, respect, and kindness, from others and from yourself. Saying goodbye opened the door to healing and new beginnings, and even though the path ahead is not always clear, I walk it with hope. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to say goodbye. Being alone is a strange feeling. Sometimes it is peaceful. Other times it feels heavy and lonely. After saying goodbye, I found myself in a new place. Alone, but not empty. Alone, but learning to fill that space with something new. At first, the silence was difficult. I was used to the noise of family life, the sounds of voices, laughter, even arguments. Suddenly, the quiet felt loud. It echoed inside me, reminding me of the distance I had created. I felt vulnerable and unsure, but I knew being alone did not mean I was weak. It meant I had space to breathe, to think, to heal. I began to spend time with myself in ways I never had before. I learned to enjoy my own company. I read books that I had put aside for years. I listened to music that touched my soul. I took long walks, feeling the fresh air on my face, the sun warming my skin. In those quiet moments, I started to hear my own voice again. The voice that had been drowned out by worry, disappointment, and the demands of others. I remembered who I was beneath the roles I played: mother, wife, caretaker. I discovered a new kind of strength in solitude. It was not loud or showy. It was calm and steady. It came from accepting myself, flaws and all. Being alone gave me time to reflect on my choices and dreams. I thought about the things I had set aside to please others. I thought about the things I still wanted to do. I realized that being alone was not the end of the story. It was a new chapter, one filled with possibilities. I also learned to be gentle with myself. Sometimes loneliness would creep in like a cold shadow. I would miss the warmth of connection. But I reminded myself that feelings come and go. They do not define me. I found comfort in simple routines. Making a cup of tea, tending to my plants, journaling my thoughts. These small acts grounded me. I also reached out to new friends and old ones. Being alone did not mean being isolated. I built a support network that felt nourishing and real. One evening, as I sat by the window watching the sunset, I felt a quiet peace. The sky was painted with soft colors, pinks, purples, and gold. It was beautiful and fleeting, just like life. In that moment, I understood that being alone had taught me something important. I was enough. I did not need others to complete me. I could be whole on my own. This was not pride or arrogance. It was a deep sense of self-respect and acceptance. I knew the road ahead would have challenges. There would be days when loneliness returned, when old wounds ached. But I also knew I had the strength to face them. Being alone had opened the door to freedom. Freedom to be myself, to make my own choices, and to create a life that felt true. I looked forward to waking up each day and discovering what was next. I felt curious and hopeful. I was no longer afraid of solitude. Instead, I embraced it as a time of growth and renewal. To anyone who is alone right now, I want to say this: you are not empty. You are not forgotten. You are whole, just as you are. Alone does not mean lonely. It means you have space to find yourself, and that is a powerful place to be. Life has a way of changing us, sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly. After all that I had been through, I looked in the mirror one morning and realized something important. I was not the same person I had been before. That realization was both strange and powerful. I felt different inside, stronger, wiser, more aware. The pain and struggles had left marks, but they also brought growth. I had learned lessons that only experience can teach. I noticed how my thoughts had shifted. I was less afraid of being alone. I was less eager to please everyone around me. I was more certain about what I wanted and needed. My heart felt softer, but also firmer. I had forgiven some people and myself, but I had also set clear boundaries. I understood that love should never hurt or break a person's spirit. The changes were not just inside. I moved differently, walked with a new confidence. My smile returned, but it was different, calm and true, not forced or fearful. Friends and family began to notice this change too. Some asked if I had found a new purpose or energy. I could only say that I had found myself again. I spent more time thinking about who I really was beyond the roles I had played. Being a mother, a wife, a friend were parts of me, but I was more than those titles. I remembered the dreams I had set aside when life became busy and complicated. I started to explore those dreams again, small steps at first. I took a painting class, something I had always wanted to do but never made time for. The colors and brushes felt like a new language, one that helped me express feelings I could not put into words. I also began to write more, keeping a journal of my thoughts and emotions. Writing was a way to understand myself better and to heal the invisible wounds inside. This new self-awareness made me more patient with others. I saw that everyone has their own struggles, even if they do not show them. I stopped rushing to judge or fix situations. Instead, I listened more. At times, I felt proud of the woman I was becoming. Not proud in a boastful way, but proud in a quiet, deep way. I respected my own courage and resilience. However, change is not always easy. Sometimes I missed the old version of myself, the one who was less aware but also less burdened. I knew that growth often comes with discomfort. I learned to accept this discomfort as part of the process. It was a sign that I was moving forward, even when the path was unclear. I also realized that change is ongoing. I will continue to grow and evolve as I face new experiences and challenges. That is the beauty of life. It never stands still. I found peace in this thought. I no longer expected myself to be perfect or to have all the answers. I gave myself permission to be a work in progress. This new mindset helped me enjoy the present moment more. I appreciated the small joys, a warm cup of tea, a kind word from a stranger, the sound of birds in the morning. I began to see my story not just as one of pain and loss, but also as one of strength and hope. I was a survivor, a woman who faced hard truths and chose to rise. The woman looking back at me in the mirror was different, but she was also familiar. She carried the same heart, the same soul. But now, she was more whole. I want to tell anyone listening who feels lost or broken that change is possible. You are not stuck. You can grow beyond your pain. It takes time and patience. It takes kindness to yourself. But it is worth it. You will not be the same, and that is good, because you are becoming who you were meant to be. Every step forward is a step toward healing and freedom, and I am proud to say I am walking that path. Sometimes when everything feels dark and uncertain, a small light can change everything. It might be a kind word, a simple gesture, or a moment of hope that quietly grows inside you. For me, that small light came when I least expected it. After months of feeling lost and alone, I found myself sitting in my favorite cafe on a rainy afternoon. The soft sound of rain against the window matched my mood, calm but a little sad. I was wrapped in my coat, holding a warm cup of tea, watching people pass by outside. As I sat there, an elderly woman at the next table smiled at me. She had kind eyes and a gentle face, and something about her warmth reached out to me. She nodded and said softly, "It is good to see you here." I smiled back, a little surprised. "Thank you," I said. She introduced herself as Mary and told me she came to the cafe every week. We began to talk slowly, sharing small stories about our lives. Mary listened with patience and understanding. She did not rush me or judge me. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly heard. Mary told me about her own struggles, the losses she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. Her words were simple but full of wisdom. She said, "Life can be very hard, but there is always a light, even in the darkest times. You have to look for it." Her story touched me deeply. I realized that I was not alone in my pain. Others had walked similar paths and found ways to keep going. That small conversation gave me hope. It was like a tiny flame flickering in the dark, promising warmth and comfort. After that day, I began to notice small lights everywhere. A stranger's smile on the street, a message from an old friend, a quiet moment of peace during my morning walk. I learned that hope does not have to be loud or grand. It can be soft and gentle, growing slowly inside your heart. I started to write down these small lights in my journal. Each one was a reminder that life still held beauty and kindness. The small light also gave me courage to try new things. I signed up for a cooking class, something I had avoided because I was afraid of failing. The first few lessons were hard, but I kept going. Each time I succeeded in making a dish, no matter how simple, I felt a spark of pride. Those small wins added up and helped me believe in myself again. I also reached out to my daughter Emily. We had not spoken much since the conflict began, but I decided to send her a letter. I did not expect a reply, but I wanted her to know I still cared. To my surprise, Emily wrote back. Her words were hesitant, but kind. We began to rebuild a fragile connection, one step at a time. That small light of reconciliation warmed my heart in ways I did not expect. I learned that healing is not a straight path. It is full of twists and turns, ups and downs, but every small light along the way can guide you forward. Sometimes the light comes from within. Sometimes it comes from others. I began to understand that I had the power to create my own light. Through kindness, courage, and patience, I could shine even on the darkest days. This small light also reminded me to be gentle with myself, to accept my mistakes and forgive my weaknesses, to celebrate my progress, no matter how slow. I found peace in knowing that healing is a journey, not a destination. If you are feeling lost or overwhelmed right now, I want you to remember this. Look for the small lights around you. They may be quiet, but they are real. Hold on to them. Let them guide you through the shadows. No matter how dark it seems, there is always hope. And sometimes, a small light is all you need to find your way. Starting over is never easy. It can feel like stepping into the unknown without a map or guide. But after all I had been through, I knew I had to begin again. Not just for my family or anyone else, but for myself. The first days of this new beginning were quiet. I woke up each morning with a deep breath and a small hope that today would be better than yesterday. I made a promise to myself to take things slowly and kindly. I began with small changes. I cleaned my home, making space for new energy. I opened the windows to let fresh air inside. I found comfort in routine. A simple breakfast, a walk outside, a moment to write my thoughts. Self-care became a priority. I learned to listen to my body and mind, to rest when I was tired, and to move when I needed energy. I took long baths, drank herbal tea, and gave myself permission to say no. In the past, I had put others first, often forgetting my own needs. Now, I realized that taking care of myself was not selfish. It was necessary. I had to be whole before I could help others. I also began to set goals. Nothing big or overwhelming, just small steps that felt possible. I wanted to reconnect with old friends, to try new hobbies, and to explore parts of myself I had neglected. One morning, I signed up for a yoga class. I was nervous, but curious. The gentle movements helped me feel more connected to my body and calm my restless mind. I met new people in that class, people who were kind and encouraging. It felt good to be part of a group, to share smiles and stories without judgment. I also returned to my writing. Journaling became a daily habit, a way to process my feelings and dreams. I wrote about my fears, my hopes, and the lessons I was learning. This new beginning was not perfect. There were days when old doubts crept in, when loneliness felt heavy, or when I wished things could go back to the way they were. But I reminded myself that growth takes time. Every morning was a chance to start fresh, to leave behind pain and disappointment, to choose hope and courage. I found joy in simple things, watching the sunrise, hearing birds sing, feeling the breeze on my face. These moments reminded me that life is still beautiful, even when it feels hard. I also began to forgive, not just others, but myself. I let go of guilt and regret that had weighed me down for so long. Forgiveness was not easy, but it was freeing. It opened my heart and cleared space for love and peace. As I moved forward, I felt a growing sense of confidence. I was no longer the woman who waited for others to decide her worth. I was my own person, with my own voice and dreams. This new beginning was a journey of rediscovery. I was learning to trust myself again, to believe in my strength and value. Knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but I felt ready. Ready to face whatever came with courage and grace. Starting over is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of hope and resilience. To anyone listening who feels stuck or broken, I want to say this. You can begin again too. You do not have to stay where you are. Take one small step. Breathe deeply. Believe in your own strength. Your new beginning is waiting. And I am walking mine, one day at a time. Just as I began to feel steady in my new life, he appeared again. It was unexpected, like a shadow returning after I thought it had disappeared for good. He tried to come back. At first, I did not believe it was real. I told myself it was just a memory, a ghost from the past trying to haunt me. But then, the messages started. Simple texts, polite calls, invitations to talk. I felt a mix of emotions: surprise, anger, confusion, and even a small flicker of hope. Part of me wanted to believe things could be different this time. Maybe he had changed. But deep down, I remembered the pain, the broken promises, the lies. I knew I could not forget so easily. When we finally met, the air between us was heavy with silence. He looked different, tired, maybe regretful. I searched his eyes for honesty, for the truth I needed to hear. He spoke carefully, saying he wanted to make amends, that he had made mistakes and wanted to fix them. He asked if I could forgive him. I listened, but my heart was guarded. Forgiveness is not easy, especially when trust has been broken. It takes time and actions, not just words. I told him I needed to protect myself, that I could not risk being hurt again. I explained that I was different now, stronger and wiser. He nodded, understanding, or at least pretending to. He said he would wait, that he was willing to prove himself. But I knew that waiting for someone else to change is dangerous. Change must come from within, and it must be real. Over the next weeks, he tried to reconnect. He sent flowers, wrote letters, offered help. Some of it felt genuine, but some felt like attempts to control or manipulate. I learned to watch for the signs, the small things that reveal true intentions. Actions speak louder than words. I kept my boundaries clear. I did not answer every message. I did not agree to every meeting. I gave myself space to think and feel without pressure. Friends warned me to be careful. They reminded me of the past and encouraged me to trust my instincts. I took their advice seriously. I remembered the pain and the lessons learned. This was not about punishment or revenge. It was about self-respect and self-love. I realized that sometimes people come back not to heal, but to reopen old wounds. I refused to let that happen. At the same time, I did not close my heart completely. I wanted to believe in the possibility of change, but only if it was true. I decided to focus on myself, my growth, and my happiness. I would not let his return derail my progress. I spent more time with friends, pursuing hobbies, and nurturing my peace. This choice was empowering. It reminded me that I am the author of my own story. I can choose who stays in my life and who does not. I can choose love, but also respect and safety. The tension between us was real, but I stayed calm. I practiced patience and clear thinking. I knew that healing takes time. Some relationships are meant to end, and some are meant to change. Only time would tell. For now, I chose myself. I was not the same woman he had left behind. I was stronger, more aware, and ready to face whatever came. He might try to come back, but I had the power to say yes or no. And that power was mine alone. I am different now. This simple truth settled deep inside me like a steady flame. I realized that the woman I was before, the one who doubted herself and tolerated pain, no longer existed in the same way. I had changed, quietly, but powerfully. When he tried to come back, I saw clearly how much I had grown. I no longer felt afraid or desperate for approval. I understood my worth and knew I deserved respect. This awareness made me stronger than I ever thought possible. I looked at myself in the mirror one morning and saw more than just my reflection. I saw resilience in my eyes and calm in my smile. The wrinkles and lines on my face told stories of battles fought and lessons learned. They were proof of survival and growth. My heart felt lighter, even though the past still lingered. I no longer carried the heavy weight of blame or regret. Instead, I carried hope and acceptance. I noticed that my voice had changed too. When I spoke, my words were firmer but kinder. I could say no without guilt and ask for what I needed without fear. Boundaries were no longer walls to keep others out, but shields to protect my peace. This transformation was not sudden. It was the result of months of reflection, healing, and small steps forward. Every tear shed, every moment of doubt faced, had brought me here. I had learned to listen to myself, to trust my instincts and honor my feelings. When something did not feel right, I no longer ignored it. Instead, I paused and asked why. That question, why, became a tool for growth. It helped me understand my needs and desires more clearly. It helped me recognize patterns that kept me stuck and gave me the courage to break them. I realized that being different meant choosing myself, even when it was hard. It meant leaving behind relationships that hurt me, no matter how much history we shared. It meant embracing uncertainty and stepping into the unknown with faith. I found new ways to express my emotions. Instead of holding everything inside, I wrote in my journal, talked to trusted friends, and even cried openly when I needed to. This honesty with myself was freeing. I also discovered that self-love is not selfish. It is the foundation of all healthy relationships. When I loved myself, I attracted people who respected and valued me. My family began to notice the change too. They saw a woman who was calm in the face of conflict and confident in her decisions. Some were surprised, others curious. I did not try to explain myself to everyone. I knew that not everyone would understand or accept my new self. And that was okay. What mattered was that I understood and accepted myself fully. I embraced my flaws and strengths equally. I celebrated my victories, no matter how small. I forgave myself for mistakes and chose to learn from them. Being different also meant letting go of the need to control everything. I learned to surrender to the flow of life and trust that things would unfold as they should. This surrender brought peace. It allowed me to be present and enjoy moments without worrying about the future or regretting the past. I became more patient, with others and with myself. I realized that growth is a journey, not a destination. I started to see challenges as opportunities to learn and grow rather than threats. This shift in mindset made life feel lighter and more hopeful. I also opened my heart to new possibilities. I was no longer afraid to dream or take risks. I knew that failure was not the end, but a step toward success. This new confidence helped me reconnect with old passions and explore new interests. I took up painting, something I had loved as a child, but set aside for years. The colors and brushes became a way to express feelings I could not put into words. I made new friends who inspired and supported me. Their kindness and encouragement lifted me up and reminded me that I was not alone. Most importantly, I began to love myself deeply and unconditionally. This love was quiet but strong, like a steady river that nourished my soul. I am different now, not because I am perfect, but because I am whole, because I have faced darkness and found my light, because I have chosen to live fully with courage and grace, and that makes all the difference. Choosing myself was the most important decision I have ever made. It was not easy, but it was necessary. After years of putting others first, of bending and breaking to meet their needs, I finally realized that I must come first. This choice was not about selfishness. It was about self-respect, about recognizing my own value and honoring it every day. I had been lost in the shadows of other people's expectations for too long. Now, I stepped into the light of my own life. The day I made this choice, I felt a quiet power inside me. It was like waking up from a long sleep and seeing the world with fresh eyes. I understood that I was worthy of love, kindness, and happiness, not because I earned them, but because they are my birthright. I remember sitting alone in my favorite chair, the sunlight spilling through the window. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I told myself, I choose me. I choose my peace. I choose my happiness. Those words were simple, but they carried weight. They broke the chains of doubt and fear that had held me back. Choosing myself meant saying no to what did not serve me. It meant ending toxic relationships, setting boundaries, and protecting my heart. It meant listening to my inner voice, even when it whispered truths I was afraid to hear. I had spent so many years trying to please everyone, my children, my family, even strangers. But no one could love me the way I could love myself. And that, love was the foundation for everything. I started to notice how differently I treated myself. I spoke kindly in my thoughts. I took breaks when I needed them. I allowed myself to rest without guilt. I stopped apologizing for taking up space or having needs. I began to celebrate my accomplishments, no matter how small. This shift was gradual but powerful. Each day, I grew more confident in my choice. There were moments when old fears crept in, the fear of loneliness, of rejection, of failure. But I faced them head on. I reminded myself that these feelings were part of the journey, not the destination. Sought support from friends who uplifted me and understood my path. Their encouragement strengthened my resolve. Choosing myself also meant forgiving those who had hurt me, not to excuse their actions, but to free myself from anger and bitterness. Forgiveness lightened my heart and opened space for healing. It was a gift I gave to myself. I realized that I could not control other people's actions or feelings, but I could control how I responded. I chose to respond with love and grace. This choice empowered me to rebuild my life on my own terms. I created new routines that nurtured my well-being. I pursued passions that brought me joy and fulfillment. I invested time in my health, both physical and mental. I found peace in meditation and gentle exercise. I nourished my body with wholesome food. I also embraced solitude, not as loneliness, but as a chance to connect deeply with myself. These moments became sacred. Choosing myself was a declaration of independence. It was a statement that I was no longer willing to settle for less than I deserved. I was the author of my story, the captain of my ship. This choice did not mean I was perfect, or that life was free from challenges. But it meant I was ready to face whatever came with courage and clarity. I felt a new sense of freedom. Freedom from doubt, from fear, from the need for external validation. I was free to be authentic, to live with honesty and integrity. Most importantly, I was free to love myself fully and without conditions. This love gave me strength to heal old wounds and build a future filled with hope. Choosing myself was not a one-time event. It is a daily practice, a commitment to honor who I am. Each morning I remind myself of this choice. Each night I celebrate the courage it takes. I know that there will be days when I struggle, but I also know that I will always return to this truth. I choose myself, and in that choice I find peace. The morning light felt different that day. It was softer, warmer, like a gentle promise. When I opened my eyes, I sensed a calm that had been missing for a long time. It was the beginning of a new day, and with it, a new chapter in my life. Smiled quietly to myself. Not because I forgot the past. No, I could never forget those moments, but because I survived. I had made it through the storm, and now the sky was clear. The house was peaceful. The usual noise of daily life was absent, replaced by a quiet stillness that invited reflection. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the world wake up. Birds chirped softly, and the breeze moved the leaves in a slow dance. It was a simple scene, but it held so much meaning. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the doubts, the small victories. Every step, even the hardest ones, had shaped me into the woman I had become. Today, I felt ready to embrace life fully. No more hiding in shadows or shrinking to fit others' expectations. This day was mine to live, on my terms. I remembered the words I had whispered to myself in the quiet moments. I choose myself. Those words had carried me through the darkest nights and the loneliest days. They were now a steady rhythm in my heart. As I prepared breakfast, I took my time. I chopped fresh fruit, brewed coffee, and arranged everything with care. This act of nurturing myself was a small but powerful reminder of self-love. Eating slowly, I savored each bite. I felt gratitude for the simple pleasures, the taste of food, the warmth of the sun, the comfort of my own company. Later I stepped outside. The air was crisp and fresh. I took a deep breath and felt the energy of the new day fill me. I decided to go for a walk in the park nearby. The trees stood tall, their branches reaching toward the sky. I watched children playing, couples holding hands, and elderly friends sharing smiles. Life was moving around me, full of quiet beauty and connection. I felt part of that flow, no longer disconnected or alone. Walking slowly, I reflected on how much I had changed. I had learned to accept uncertainty and to find strength in vulnerability. I had discovered that healing is not a straight path, but a winding journey. I met a neighbor on the path, someone I had not spoken to in years. We exchanged warm greetings and shared a few moments of conversation. It was a simple connection, but it reminded me of the kindness that still exists in the world. Back at home, I opened my journal and wrote down my thoughts. Writing helped me understand my feelings and celebrate my progress. I wrote about hope, how it had returned gently but steadily, like the first light of dawn. I wrote about forgiveness, how it had freed me from the weight of resentment. I wrote about love, starting with myself and extending outward. The day passed quietly but meaningfully. I spent time reading, listening to music, and resting. I allowed myself to enjoy the moment without rushing or worrying. As evening came, I prepared a simple dinner and sat by the window once again. The sky was painted with soft shades of pink and orange. I felt a deep sense of peace. Life was not perfect, but it was beautiful in its imperfection. I smiled again, this time with full awareness. This smile was not a mask or a hope for something better. It was a smile of survival, of growth, of true acceptance. I had faced my fears, made difficult choices, and found my way back to myself. This was a new day, a day of calm, strength, and quiet joy, and I was ready to live it. The morning began with stillness. No rush, no noise, just peace. As I opened my eyes, I felt something soft settle in my heart. Gratitude. Quiet, deep gratitude. Not just for the big things, but for the small ones too. I stood at the kitchen counter, holding my warm mug in both hands. The steam rose slowly, swirling in the morning light. I watched it, thinking about how far I had come. There was a time when I woke up filled with anxiety. I used to wonder what I had done wrong, or what else I needed to do to be enough. But not today. Today, I felt whole. I sat down with my journal. The pen moved easily. I did not write about pain or fear. I wrote thank you. Thank you to the lessons. Thank you to the quiet strength I never knew I had. I thought back to the difficult conversations I had avoided for years, the ones I finally had, the words I finally said, the moments I finally faced. Each one had carved a space for something new inside me. Thank you to the heartbreak, I wrote, because even though it tore me open, it also made me grow. Thank you to the silence, because it taught me to listen to myself. I wrote thank you to the loneliness. It was not easy to be alone, especially when I had spent most of my life surrounded by others, meeting their needs, calming their storms, cheering them on. But when they left me out, when they forgot me, when they stopped showing, upon I found myself, I discovered that my own company could be enough. I learned to enjoy the sound of my own breathing, the comfort of my own thoughts, and the beauty of simple things, like tea, rain, or music. I walked through my home that day with a gentle heart. I paused by the framed photos on the wall. Some faces still hurt to see. Some memories still stung. But I whispered thank you anyway, because they were part of my story. And without them, I would not be standing where I am today. I said thank you to the mirror. Not out loud, just with a soft smile. I looked into my own eyes and saw the woman who stayed. The woman who cried and healed and grew stronger. The woman who kept going. Later in the afternoon, I took a walk through the old neighborhood park. The trees were full and green. The path curved gently ahead. A little girl ran past me, laughing, her shoes untied and her hair wild in the wind. Remembered walking that same path with my children years ago, holding their hands, lifting them when they fell, teaching them to notice the world around them. They had forgotten those moments, but I had not. Still, I said thank you, because even if they did not remember, I did, and those memories were mine to keep. There was no bitterness in my heart anymore, just a quiet release. I let go of the need to be seen a certain way. I no longer needed to prove my worth. As the sun began to set, I sat on a wooden bench and looked up at the sky. The clouds moved slowly. The colors softened. Everything felt calm. I closed my eyes and took a long, steady breath. Thank you to this life, I thought, for its lessons, its pain, its beauty, for second chances, for small joys. Thank you for the people who left and the ones who stayed. Thank you for the version of myself I left behind and the one I am becoming. I did not need everything to be perfect. I did not need apologies. I did not even need understanding from others. All I needed was this: peace within myself. I whispered the words once more. Thank you. Not for what happened, but for what I learned, for how I grew, for the strength I found. And as I walked home, I felt it again. Not the old sadness, not the past pain, but a steady sense of grace. Gratitude had become my new language, and I was finally fluent in it. The hardest forgiveness is not the one we give to others. It is the one we give to ourselves. I did not fully understand that until I sat alone in my bedroom, looking into the mirror and realizing how long I had carried guilt. That morning, I felt it pressing on my chest again, the old weight of regret. I had said thank you to the pain, to the lessons, even to the people who had hurt me. But I had not yet said those words to myself. I had not forgiven myself. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. I gave too much. I waited too long. I thought love meant sacrifice, even when it hurt. For years, I blamed myself for the distance between me and my children. I believed that if I had raised them better, loved them differently, or spoken more gently, they would have stayed close. They would have remembered my birthday. They would have called. I replayed conversations over and over in my mind, wondering which word had turned them away. But now, as I sat in silence, I began to see the truth. I had done my best with the tools. I had given my love the only way I knew how. And even if I had made mistakes, I was still worthy of forgiveness. I looked in the mirror, not with judgment, but with softness. I saw the lines on my face, the quiet sorrow in my eyes, the tiredness that came from years of emotional carrying. I saw a woman who had survived disappointment, heartbreak, and loneliness, and had kept going. I said it aloud this time, just above a whisper. I forgive you. My voice trembled, but the words were real. I forgive you for the years you stayed silent. I forgive you for being too soft when you should have been firm. I forgive you for loving people who could not love you the same way. I closed my eyes and let those words settle into me. I forgive you for believing you were not enough. I forgive you for forgetting your own worth. I forgive you for all the times you smiled while breaking inside. There were tears, not sharp, bitter tears, but soft, warm ones that carried relief. I was not perfect. No mother is. No woman is. But I had always led with love. I had always meant well, even when the outcome was not what I hoped for. Later that day, I took out old letters and photos. Some of them made me smile. Others brought a small ache. I did not rush through them. I held each memory gently, like a fragile piece of glass. There were notes from school projects, holiday cards, photos of messy birthdays and tired but happy faces. I had been there for it all. Even if they forgot, I had not. I whispered to the woman I used to be. You did well. You gave them everything. Then I whispered again, and it is all right that they do not see it now. Forgiveness does not change the past. It does not erase what happened, but it changes how we carry it. I no longer wanted to carry guilt like a stone in my pocket. I wanted to carry peace. I wanted to walk lightly again. So I forgave myself. I forgave the version of me who was too tired to speak up. The one who cried, in secret. The one who longed for a thank you that never came. I also forgave the part of me that still hoped, even now, for a reunion, for a message, for some sign of love. Hope is not weakness. It is human. By the end of the evening, I felt different, not healed completely, but lighter. Forgiveness was not a single moment. It was a choice I would have to keep making, each day, each time I remembered something painful, each time I doubted my worth. But I had taken the first step. I had said the words, and for the first time in a very long time, I could look at myself and feel proud. Not because I was perfect, but because I had made peace with being human. It was a quiet morning, just like any other. But something inside me had shifted. I could feel it in my breath, in the way I moved, in the stillness of my heart. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not the kind of freedom that comes from distance. Not the kind that requires walls or silence or goodbyes. This was different. It was the freedom that comes when the weight inside your chest finally lifts. Had carried so many invisible burdens for so many years. Expectations, regret, guilt. I had lived my life for others, my children, my family, even strangers at times, always trying to be everything to everyone. But on that morning I did not feel the pull to explain myself. I did not feel the ache to be understood or seen. I simply felt whole. I opened the windows wide. The wind swept through my house like a gentle visitor. Curtains danced. Light filled the corners that had been dark for so long. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, the cold tile grounding me, and I smiled. I did not reach for my phone. I did not check for messages that were never sent. I did not wait for someone to think of me. I had already thought of myself. I walked outside. No destination, just movement. My feet led me to a trail behind my house I had not walked in years. It was overgrown in places, the trees reaching over like protectors. I followed it, step by step, until I reached the clearing. And then I did something I had not done since I was a girl. I took off my shoes. Slowly. Gently. I stood barefoot on the grass, feeling the earth beneath me. The soil was soft, cool, alive. I closed my eyes and stretched out my arms. The breeze kissed my face. The sky above looked endless, and I danced. Not in the way dancers do on stage, not with elegance or technique, but freely, wildly, like a woman who no longer cared who was watching, like someone who had finally let go of every voice that said she was too old, too late, too much, or not enough. My arms moved without thought. My feet touched the ground with joy. I twirled slowly, then faster. I laughed. Not politely, not quietly, but deeply. From the belly, from the heart. And then I cried. Because freedom is beautiful, but it is also emotional. It is the breaking of chains that had been there so long, you almost forgot they existed. It is the first breath after being underwater. I cried for all the years I had waited. I cried for the birthdays spent alone. I cried for the phone calls that never came, for the meals I cooked and the love I gave that went unnoticed. But I also cried with joy, because I had made it. I was not bitter. I was not broken. I was not hiding anymore. I was free. Later that day, I sat on the porch with a notebook. I did not write a list of goals or tasks. I wrote a list of feelings, of truths, of things I no longer owed anyone an apology for. I do not owe anyone an explanation for my boundaries. I do not owe anyone a performance to earn their love. I do not owe anyone my silence when I have something to say. I do not owe anyone my energy if they drain it. I do not owe anyone anything that costs me my peace. I closed the notebook and placed my hand over my heart. I felt it beating, slow, steady, strong. I whispered the words I never thought I would say. You are free now. I meant it. Free to speak. Free to rest. Free to laugh without guilt. Free to feel joy without permission. Free to live the life that belongs to me, not the one others expect of me. As the sun dipped low, I watched the sky turn shades of orange and gold. A bird flew across, wings wide, unafraid of the wind. I watched her disappear into the horizon, and I knew I was just like her now, free. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she looks in the mirror and sees not just her face, but her entire journey. That morning, I stood before my mirror again. But this time, I did not look with judgment. I did not search for flaws or compare myself to anyone else. I simply looked, and I saw a woman I finally understood. For the first time, I knew who I was. I was not the mother they called only when they needed something. Was not the quiet woman in the background of every family photo. I was not the one who should apologize for being too emotional, too proud, too strong, or too tired. I was me. I saw the gray in my hair, and I smiled. Every strand was a thread of wisdom. I saw the lines around my eyes, and I smiled again. Each one had been earned through laughter, sorrow, and survival. My body had changed, yes, but it had carried life. It had held others when they cried. It had stood tall through storms. How could I not be proud of that? I went to my closet and chose my favorite dress. Not the one that was appropriate, not the one someone else once said looked best on me. I picked the one that made me feel alive. Deep red, soft fabric, flowing sleeves. I put it on, not for anyone else, but for myself. Then I put on lipstick, not to impress, but to express. A soft berry shade that made me feel bold. I went outside and took a slow walk. The sky was open, the trees were beginning to bloom, and the world seemed to mirror what was happening inside me. A neighbor waved. A child rode past on a bike and smiled. The wind carried the scent of lilacs, and I walked with my head high, because I was not hiding anymore. I knew who I was, and I did not need anyone else to confirm it. I had always wanted to be seen. But now I realized the most important person who needed to see me was me. I had spent years adjusting myself, softening my voice, shrinking my dreams, holding back tears. I wanted peace in my family. I wanted love without conflict. But sometimes, in keeping everyone else comfortable, I lost pieces of myself. Now, I was gathering those pieces again. I remembered the things I used to love. Painting, singing to old records, making soup from scratch on rainy days. I remembered how good it felt to read a book in the middle of the afternoon without guilt, to take a long bath, to say no without explaining. I had not outgrown joy. I had just misplaced it. I knew now that my worth was not measured by the opinions of others. It was not based on how many phone calls I received or who remembered a holiday. My worth was already within me. I thought back to the woman I was a year ago, aching, lonely, and quietly hoping to be chosen. And now I whispered to her in my mind, "You are chosen. By yourself. That is enough." I sat on a bench in the park and watched the people pass. Couples, children, old friends. Everyone seemed to be rushing, but I felt no rush. I felt still. I felt centered. That is how I knew I had grown. Growth is not always loud. Sometimes it is the gentle unfolding of a truth you have always known, but were afraid to accept. I do not need to be perfect. I do not need to fix what others refuse to repair. I do not need to stay small to make others comfortable. Only need to be myself, and I know now I am strong. I am gentle. I am patient. I am proud. I am loving. I am wise. I am enough. Not because someone else says so, but because I have lived through enough to know it for myself. As the sun began to set, I walked back home. My heart was quiet. My soul was calm. I did not check my phone. I did not check my email. I did not worry about who had or had not thought of me today, because I had thought of myself. And finally, that was enough. If you are listening to this right now, I want to tell you something important. This story, my story, may have started with pain, but it ends with power. And if you are sitting somewhere, feeling invisible, tired, or forgotten, then this message is for you. You are not alone. I know what it feels like to give everything to a family, only to be left behind. I know how it feels to cook meals that no one praises, to send messages that go unanswered, to be the one who remembers everyone's birthday, while your own passes like a shadow. But I also know this: you are more than what they see, and you are so much more than what they forget. You are a whole person, a story still unfolding, a spirit that cannot be erased by silence. I used to think that my value came from being needed, from being the one they called for help, the one who picked up the pieces. But now I know I am valuable because I exist, because I breathe, because I feel, and because I try. There is nothing wrong with caring deeply, with hoping, with loving people who sometimes do not know how to love you back. That does not make you weak. That makes you human. But I want to ask you something. When was the last time you chose yourself? Not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of respect. When was the last time you sat in silence and asked, "What do I want? What do I need?" You deserve to be heard. You deserve to rest. You deserve joy. And no matter how many years have passed, no matter how many mistakes you think you have made, it is never too late to start again. For you do not need a permission slip to reclaim your own life. You do not need everyone's approval before you take a walk, take a trip, take a breath. I want you to remember the version of yourself that danced when no one was looking, the version that dreamed without limits. She is still there. She is waiting, and she is ready. Maybe they forgot Mother's Day. Maybe they forgot your birthday, your sacrifices, your sleepless nights. But you did not forget. You were there. You were there every time someone cried. You were there when the bills were unpaid. You were there when no one else showed up. You were there for them. And now it is time to be there for yourself. Let go of the guilt. Let go of the shame. Let go of the idea that loving yourself is selfish. It is not selfish. It is sacred. And if you are sitting in the quiet right now, wondering what comes next, hear this. What comes next is peace. What comes next is discovery. What comes next is the life you thought you could never have. Because now you know who you are. You are allowed to laugh again. You are allowed to dance again. You are allowed to feel joy, even if no one else understands it. I do not know your exact story, but I do know your strength. Because if you have made it this far, through heartbreak, through betrayal, through disappointment, then you are stronger than you realize. Do not wait for someone else to write the next chapter for you. Pick up the pen. Write your own ending. Make it beautiful. Make it true. And when the world tries to make you feel small again, remember this moment, this voice, these words. You are not forgotten. You are not too late. You are not alone. I see you. I believe in you. And I hope you will believe in yourself, because you are worth it. You always were. And now, finally, you know. That too. So go. Breathe, smile, be free, and from my heart to yours, thank you for listening. Thank you for walking this journey with me. this was never just my story, it was yours too. And I hope, in some small way, it helped you remember who you are. You are light. You are love. You are more than enough, always.